Folks, Scott Haskin here, host of the HaskinCast Podcast, Uriah Heep the Magician's Podcast, and host of another show. For now, we'll save that again, unless it's already been announced, in which case I will be putting that in the show notes. We're about 2 months ahead, so I'm not exactly sure when this episode will air in conjunction to when episodes that I started on that show will air. So anyway, I'm having a great time on that. We're taping well ahead and having a blast with that band that we're covering that I'll get to soon. Just wanted to say hi. If you've made it this far in our four-part episode on Cobra Kai, thank you very much. I hope that you're enjoying the conversation as much as John and I did. It's such a great show, and there's just so much to go into. I mean, you would think that the shows are 45 minutes to an hour with all the detail and all the events and everything that they throw in that show. It's really amazing how much they cram into like a half hour of television, or I guess stream-o-vision, if that's, I don't even know what that's called now. Streaming, I guess it's just streaming, but stream-o-vision is, I think, an appropriate word. So I hope you guys are enjoying the conversation. Let's get to that final part 4. Thank you so much, John, for hanging out with me for a couple of hours and talking about this wonderful show. John will be back for many other things that we've got planned over the course of the rest of the show. Good news, I did find out that the 300 limit for Apple Podcasts has been lifted. So I no longer have to end the show at episode 300. I can keep going. They've done it up to 2,000, which I am not planning on doing 2,000 podcasts. Do not get me wrong. I have other things to do. But I do have, about 50 to 70 more episodes I'm planning. Plus, I get requests for interviews from time to time. So that adds to that number. So at least it's going to be at least another year, if not more, where the show will continue. And, who knows what direction it'll take by that point. So the good news is I don't have to split the feed into another show. I don't have to roll it into another podcast with a different news feed and a different app to follow. It can all just stay right here. So I'm very happy about that. I'm also very happy about Cobra Kai. Let's get to it. So the music to this show, I thought for the most part has just been fantastic. I love that because the show is not called Miyagi-Do, so it's not a bunch of pan flutes. It's Cobra Kai, so it's rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's distorted guitars, heavy drums, double bass, that kind of thing. I love the way that they balance the two. When it's Daniel's time, it's the pan flute. When it's, going back to the nods to the music from the movies. But I love the rock. I loved Kenny's theme. Like when he was getting chased, that fast drum beat, that, just really driving music where you felt your heart just start beating faster.
Yeah.
It's just been so well done. Until the end of the show, until the end of season 5, I hated the music with Daniel and Silver's fight. I thought it was over the top cinematic. It didn't really feel like it fit the show. Mm-hmm. And I thought the fight itself was kind of a letdown.
Yeah, I did too. Just because, I think the fight was a letdown because we wanted Daniel to have a little bit more of an upper hand, especially after the history of how Silver so badly fucked them over.
Right.
And they don't let you forget it either. Mm-hmm. We get that satisfaction at the end when he uses the Quicksilver method on him, which I thought was brilliant, is that he used his own techniques on him to disable and discredit him and finally beat him. Mm-hmm. But I thought that Daniel would have gotten more shots in because, at this point he's older, he's more seasoned. He should have had more resources. He should have had more skill to at least put up a better fight in Stingray's apartment.
Yeah.
That scene. It was, I think that in my opinion, it was a less satisfying scene just because we don't want Silver to win. So.
Right. Yeah. That the good guy is going to win in the end, but it just, I don't know, it just seemed for a guy that just beat the crap out of him. It just seemed like he was too easy to defeat this time. And even though he was using his method against him, which I love that throwback, I thought that was great.
But I don't, it just seemed like too easy of a fight. And then the crane kick really felt forced.
Yeah, I mean, I liked I like how they incorporated it though, because you kind of barely noticed it. Like they didn't make a huge deal out of it.
Mm.
I think that if they showed him getting into the crane from like several different angles and really built it up, that would have been over the top.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, I thought that it was kind of cool that they kind of worked it in there as like, oh yeah, there it is, part of his repertoire, right to the face.
Right. The one thing I did like about it though was that Silver didn't see it coming. Not like Johnny, who wouldn't have known how to defend against it. Silver, his face was turned to the wall. He was grabbing that trophy, and it's just as he was turning to face Daniel, that's when Daniel hit him. So I like that he didn't have a chance to defend himself against it.
Right.
I thought at least it was fair the way they did it.
Right, because well, I mean, it was also realistic, because the only way that if you telegraphed the crane kick, then obviously you know it's coming.
Right.
And somebody of his age and experience would be like, all right, well, obviously I'm not going to take a foot to the face, so I'm going to figure some other way out. But he turned around, and just at the point where he turned around, he was already in mid kick. So
yeah. Unlike Miguel in the first tournament in season 1, where now here there's even a poster of Daniel doing the crane kick in the tournament, and that kid didn't know what was coming and got hit in the face. And I thought, isn't this like the most famous kick in the Valley? Wouldn't anybody who's in this tournament have heard of this kick? And the kid just like gets hit. I thought that was kind of cheap. But to get back to the Silver fight, there's a thing that bothered me about both of the fights with Daniel and Silver, is that what I call the Harry Potter syndrome, which is they learn a spell and they use it for the purpose of that movie, and then even though it's an incredibly powerful tool, you'd never see it again. So thinking of Chosen and Daniel's fight with Kreese when he saved Johnny and he's hitting those pressure points, putting Kreese out of commission. Why didn't he try using those against Silver? Like that's the biggest tool you've got in your arsenal, is something that incapacitates your opponents in a split second.
Mm-hmm.
But it's again, like we saw it against Kreese because that was the series that it was, the season that it was in, and it served its purpose. So now we're never going to see it again.
Right.
So I thought, like, once again, especially if somebody's kicking your ass, you're going to go with, what can I do to stop this guy before it gets worse, since nothing else I'm doing is working. And you're going to go to, hey, I just learned this really amazing technique that'll just knock him on his ass and he won't be able to hit me anymore. And I can go slap him around all day.
Well, maybe the only thing that I could think of is that from the point of view of it being a series and not real life, is that if they just did that, then it wouldn't be interesting.
Right.
Because then you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I could just end any conflict by doing just this one thing. And they're probably trying to keep it fresh by using different moves and different techniques, and not having the fights end a certain way, because otherwise the narrative, the story isn't going to go in that direction. It just that one person would be just like taking everybody out going like this all the time. So
yeah, and that's true. And it is fair. It's just like looking at this as a real world, it doesn't make sense that wouldn't be. But then when I think about like take a movie like The Da Vinci Code, if you've seen that, and you're like, okay, so there's these centuries old mysteries that Robert Langdon is solving all of them in one day. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But for the point of the movie, it has to work that way.
Right.
But it's like because I thought about that with the Harry Potter movies. I'm like, why didn't they ever use this spell again, especially in the big fight, in the final movie, like this would have been a perfect thing to whip out, and no one thought of it out of all these kids that are fighting. Speaking of all these kids fighting, let's wrap up with the big fight at the Cobra Kai dojo at the end of season 5. Talking about Anthony, and as you mentioned that they didn't, advance him very quickly in his skills. He's still a beginner. I love that he was really not fighting through all of that. He really wasn't. And at the end, he was the one that the kind of the nerd that knew how to work the computer to save them. He got the video on the Wi-Fi, and they were protect the egg. He was the key to it, but he wasn't a fighter. I really love the way they put that together.
Yeah, because when they all gathered around, they're like, protect the egg. It wasn't just the tablet uploading the video, but it was also him.
Right. Because he had to manipulate it to get it onto the Wi-Fi.
Right. He was like the tablet or the iPad or whatever was the egg, so to speak, because they needed that to stay operational and nobody get their hands on it. But also one of the weakest fighters, if not the weakest fighter, was the egg, so to speak. And they had to gather around to make sure nobody got close to that or to him, so they could achieve their goal. So. And I thought that worked really well, because that made him kind of a hero of the scene without having to do any fighting.
Yeah. And if you think about it, there's always the need for that person. You think about like the bank robber movies, there's always got to be somebody that routes them around the alarm system, or, whatever it is. There's always got to be like that one intelligent person that doesn't have to use brutal skills to win the day. And I love that Anthony became a part of it, because the first season he was just annoying. His character was just like the annoying younger brother that had to, just get his sister in trouble and make sarcastic remarks. And then he started really growing and developing the character. And I really like him. I was really glad to see he was a part of that, because they really could have used him as a throwaway in this season too. And even though he wasn't in it a lot, they still found a way to make him very valuable and important.
Yeah, I mean, they really could have just had him be just kind of the freeloader. Like in the first, I think, season or a couple of seasons or whatever, he was just the freeloading kid who just wanted to play video games and eat ice cream, or like just be super lazy and not do anything. And then they could have just easily phased him out.
Yeah,
because he wasn't really anything. It was almost kind of like a prop. He was like the least important person in the family, because you would see like. There was Daniel and his wife, his daughter, and then who are like main characters. They got a lot of screen time, and then just like, oh, okay. And then he's got this other kid, and you were wondering like, why did they even give him another kid? Because he's not even doing anything.
Right. Yeah. But when Daniel first, like when Anthony and Daniel really have an open conversation, he says, Mr. Miyagi said one day you would save us all. And then, he was a part of that in the end of this last episode. Again, the Star Wars, you'll bring balance to the Force kind of thing, that you have to have that master, like overall goal. Right. Yeah. But even the characters that you thought were kind of throwaway characters, like I really thought Dimitri was going to be kind of a throwaway character when in the first couple seasons or the first couple episodes, and they developed him, they developed Hawk. I mean, everybody except for maybe like Moon and, the other girl.
Yeah, that's true. They're just kind of around.
Yeah, they play a small part. They're intricate in the scenes that they're in, but they're not really vital to the overall thing.
Yeah, they're Sam's friends.
Yeah,
but they don't really serve any other purpose.
Like the girl that Moon was dating that joined Cobra Kai. We didn't see her at all in this season. Like she was in the tournament, and then she wasn't in this season at all.
Right.
And that was interesting. I like that they kept Devin Lee, though. I think she's a really good addition to the cast. And I like that little moment with where Johnny sees that she's now part of Cobra Kai. That was pretty cool. But I love shows that have good writing. I love shows where every episode has actual stakes in it. Like I watched Lost, was one of my favorite shows, because they would take characters that were like main characters and they just be out. Like from out of nowhere. And I love that, because every episode you're like, what's going to happen? When I watched Breaking Bad, I thought there's only like a handful of people on this show. Everybody's pretty much going to be there except maybe one person until the end. And they pretty much were. I mean, it ended up to be a good show. I enjoyed it, but there weren't like every episode didn't have like edge of the seat stakes where something could just completely flip the show on its edge. This show does, and that's one of the things I really love about it.
Yeah.
So 2 thumbs up for me. I can't wait for season 6. God,
me too.
We could talk about so many different facets of the show. We could do like a season by season show. We could do a episode by episode show. But I just have so much appreciation and respect for the people that have put this together, that are doing such an amazing job. So final predictions for season 6. I don't think we're ever going to see Hilary Swank.
I feel like that's been teased in many different ways. Even like I think that they were somebody was saying that she was going to be somebody's mom, like she was going to come back being somebody's real mom. I can't remember who. Like maybe I can't remember. I read some predictions about it, but it's like it doesn't sound like it's happening, and it also doesn't really sound like it would be useful to the storyline or the plot. I mean, at least when you got up to Mike Barnes, that was still somebody from the original trilogy of the movies. And then by the time they got to the Hilary Swank one, yeah, Pat Morita was in it, but it really wasn't part of the same universe.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why I'm feeling that way, because there's no connection between her and Daniel. As far as we know, they've never met. There's no history. I'm sure in their time, Mr. Miyagi talked about her, but they've never mentioned her once. But they didn't really mention characters until they brought them on.
Yeah, I mean, there's a slight possibility that they bump into each other, and because they mutually knew Mr. Miyagi, that they have that in common.
Yeah,
that they could bond over that, or they could meet somehow over that. But at this point, I feel it's a stretch.
Yeah, I think it would be it would almost be like a forced thing where they would have to work it in somehow. And I think it would just feel forced, and the only thing that would really make sense would be Daniel goes to Mr. Miyagi's grave and she's standing there,
right,
paying her respects to him. But that would be the only like legitimate way I could think of them bringing her and Daniel together.
But why would she be standing there, right? Like she would have to have some kind of connection or something to that to advance the story. Otherwise, you'd just be like, oh, okay, that was a cool cameo for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen pretty much everybody except I think one or two maybe of the members of the original Cobra Kai. They mentioned the one guy was in prison, and then Ali's friend from the original movie, the one that said she must be into fungus. Like we haven't seen her, but I mean we've seen pretty much everybody major from. I mean, there's like Daniel's friend that he met when he first moved into the apartment at the beginning of the movie that took him to the beach, and it's like completely just incidental characters. But I really don't think there's anyone else to bring back at this point.
And really, I don't know if at this point it's even about bringing anybody back. I feel like if they're going to go out in the season 6, then they should just rely on the ensemble that they put together and focus on wrapping it up to a really satisfying ending to the whole story. Because if they're just going to be concerned with, who else could we bring back, then that's where it gets into jumping the shark.
Yeah, and I'm curious if Mike Barnes is going to play a role in the next season too, because his character could easily just be done. He's been made whole. He got his revenge on Silver. Don't really know that there's any need for his character to be there either.
Right.
So it's really going to be interesting to see. Oh, that was my other favorite line in the show was when Chosen gets out of the limo and when they're at the Cobra Kai dojo and he says it's just a flesh wound, and Daniel says, yeah, it's like all your flesh though. And he just basically taped him up, and they're like, yeah, just get in the limo. We're gonna make a stop on the way to the hospital. You just had your whole back sliced open, but you're all right.
It's like, yeah, but it's all your flesh. There were so many great lines that I probably can't even remember.
Most of them are Johnny's. Most of them are Johnny's lines.
I was going to say most of them are Johnny's lines. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, when I was teasing the new season to my dad, he's like, "Is it good?" And I'm like, "I'll give you. Can I tell you one thing?" He goes, "All right." I said, Johnny gets a job as an Uber driver, and he's like, "Oh, I can't wait." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's gonna be good."
There is actually one more thing. There's one part of this season that is actually kind of hard for me to watch. And besides the cockroaches, I hate cockroaches. I really wish I could just clip that scene out of Netflix and not have it there. But is the scene where Daniel and his wife go to Silver's house. It is so hard for me to watch the manipulation, because that is the biggest mind fuck in this whole thing. And it's like with Kreese, like when you see anybody talking to Kreese, you feel like you're watching the gears behind his head turn, as how can I turn whatever they're saying into my advantage? Like, how can I get one over on them? But what Silver did to Daniel, it goes exactly back to what he did to him in the third movie. Yeah. And just having his wife be the victim of that, like, that is just so hard for me to watch, because she has done nothing wrong to anybody in this whole thing. You know, she's tried to help Tori. She's been supportive to like, she has been like the one most innocent person. And she was the one that got hurt on that episode.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was his manipulation of Daniel that cost her being on the board of that committee or whatever, presumably. Mm-hmm. And that just showed, but I mean, that just also showed you what a despicable person Terry Silver is, because he would do that to her just to hurt Daniel. Yeah. And even that smirk of his, like when he gets knocked over and everything, he's like, and you're just like, oh God, I wanted to get his so bad.
I wonder with them, because he's so much taller than everyone else, I really wonder if it's difficult to do the fight choreography with him, just because his reach is so much longer than anyone else's.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know anything about that, but I mean, I would guess. Yeah, how tall is he? You know,
I don't know what his actual height is. He's got to be at least 6'2", 6'3". No, he's got to be taller than that, and he towers over pretty much everybody.
Yeah, he looks like he's definitely over 6 feet, but
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how those things work, but I mean, they definitely have all sorts of different things to manipulate perspective. I'm sure that they figured it out. They have things that are probably standard, so they don't even worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, the camera angles and everything that they do for the fights is what really works, what makes the fights look so realistic. I mean, listening to the interviews from the cast, yeah, every once in a while somebody does get hit. You know, it does happen, but I mean, you could be 3 feet away from somebody and just have the camera behind you or slightly off to the side, and it just forces the perspective to where it looks like they're much closer. And that's how they shoot it, you know. Mm-hmm. But it just seems like with a guy that has that, I think back to what was it? The last movie that Bruce Lee did when he was fighting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And Bruce Lee was not a big guy. He really wasn't. And for him to be fighting a guy that's that tall, who has a leg reach, like he could just keep you away with his foot and you won't get anywhere near him. You know, like that kind of fight, that's tough to do.
Yeah.
You know, but they really pull it off, because you don't get the sense that it was difficult. Like his fight scenes are very well done. Mm-hmm. You know, plus he's a big guy. Like, it's not just his height; he's like a big guy.
I mean, he looks like it.
Yeah. Well, great show. We'll have to see what happens in this season. See how many of our thoughts and predictions come true.
Well, I hope some of them are right.
Like there's a season 6 would be a start.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't heard anything announced about it. I guess it hasn't been officially announced, but if you had recently read something that they have a lot of stuff that they can use for season 6, or they could use for a potential season 6. I don't think it's been officially announced yet, but
yeah,
they would be crazy not to build on that.
Oh,
they have to.
Would.
I mean, it's successful enough where they got to do it.
Exactly. I mean, they've already got all the locations built. I mean, just reconstructing Mr. Miyagi's house, you know, his dojo house, and that whole area with the car. I mean, it was just so well done. They spent all the money on that already. Then they would just, you know, they're going to have to throw it away at some point because the show's going to be over. But why not get as much out of that as you can? And the show is drawing such huge numbers. Well, what I saw was in an interview, somebody asked William Zabka, is there going to be a season 6? Because Netflix hadn't confirmed that they had renewed it yet. And he didn't actually say, yes, there is. He just says, we have a lot of footage that's already been shot for it that was left over from season 5.
Right. Okay.
So basically, like, yeah, there's going to be, but there's no official announcement. So I'm just going to hang my hat on that hope and let it be that. But at least they're not doing anything like Star Wars, where like, oh, a ghost is going to come back and Mr. Miyagi's ghost is going to come back and help you guys through your problems. And I mean, if they would have gone that route where Daniel was seeing visions of Mr. Miyagi I think the show would have just been stupid.
I mean, I like, and that's one thing that we actually didn't talk about, which we can before we wrap it up. But I think that Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, is probably one of the biggest presences on the show that's not on the show.
Right.
Because I mean, everything from the name of the dojo to his influence on Daniel and everybody afterwards. And they used in the first couple of seasons footage from the original movies. And I think they still did in this one a couple of things just to illustrate some stuff. So it's nice to see that, but it's also nice to see, like you said, that they're not putting him like a CGI version of him or something in like some visions or stuff like that. Or even when Daniel goes to visit his grave, it really feels like it's rooted in reality, because when you're seeing those flashbacks, they're using the flashbacks from the original movies, which to me, it keeps it real. Mm-hmm. And it also keeps it real. Like when I don't know how many times, maybe just a couple of times, he visited Miyagi's grave, and it's really rooted in reality, is that he's standing there and he's looking at the gravestone and he's talking to it. And maybe there might have been a couple of flashbacks, which was footage from the original movies. But like I said, there was nothing in it where there was a CGI'd version or some guy like in some Miyagi lookalike that tried to be in a vision. Like they didn't try and use any new footage. They just kind of left that alone. Mm-hmm. Even when they showed Daniel going into his room in the newest season, I guess he kind of kept his old bedroom kind of as it was, as like a shrine.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that you'll see in like true crime stories or even like horror movies of somebody that lost somebody. And that's one of those things that you always think about, like, would I do that? Mm-hmm. Like if a loved one died or went missing or something, would I just close that door and preserve the whole room as like a museum type of thing? I just think that really hits a note, tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, because that is one character that unfortunately could not be part of the show. And they I'm sure that they must have gotten all sorts of permission and blessing from his family or whatever to use that footage and his likeness and everything like that. And I'm glad that they did, because if they weren't able to, or even rights to the original movies, I mean, who knows who is, for all we know, Ralph Macchio owns all of them, but it would have been really tacky if they had to kind of play their way around that.
I absolutely agree. And, that was one of the scenes too, thinking about the time that Mr. Miyagi got drunk, and then they replicated that, because he was like, Daniel, come inside. He said that twice. And then when Miguel found after the prom and he went to Johnny's house and Johnny was like, come inside. And they basically like replicated the Daniel Miyagi scene with Miguel and Johnny. That was another one of those like really, really like spot for spot throwbacks that they did. But thinking about Daniel visiting Mr. Miyagi's grave at the end of season 4, it looks like he's talking to Mr. Miyagi, but he's actually talking to Chosen, who's off to the side saying, will you help me take him down? And then I started thinking about that. I'm like, wait a minute. So Chosen flew from Okinawa to Los Angeles, and Daniel didn't even have a confirmation of whether he was going to help him. Like, what happened there?
It wouldn't have been as dramatic.
Well, yeah. And then they confirmed it because his wife said, you flew him out here. And I'm like, okay, so was he just like, hey, why don't you come and meet me at Mr. Miyagi's grave? I got a question for you. I'm pretty sure he had already agreed to that before he got the plane ticket.
If you think of it like that, though, it does sound really ridiculous.
It really does.
I mean, meet me at this cemetery. I got a question for you really quick.
But it was a great reveal. I mean, because you really thought he was talking to Mr. Miyagi, and he's like, will you help me? I'm like, how is he gonna, okay, where's this going? And then they pan the camera and you hear and you see Chosen. I thought that was and the music that they played after that too was just so powerful. Like you felt Chosen was gonna fuck shit up.
Yeah. and he did.
And he did. And he came in like, well, man, his character has such a great arc. But too, thinking about the music, like when they played, when the two dojos, Eagle Fang and Miyagido, first got together at the end of, it must have been season 2 or season 3. And the way that that version that they did of In the Air Tonight was just, it gave me chills. That was so well placed.
Yeah, I think I definitely love the soundtrack, the score to this series.
Mm-hmm. When Allie comes back and they first do her reveal at her parents' house, they're playing a little bit of Christmas music because obviously, the house is decorated for Christmas. They're getting you in now we're at the Christmas episode one. And the Christmas song they were playing actually sounded, I haven't looked, but it sounded like it was by Bananarama.
Huh. No, we'd have to look that. Yeah, we definitely have to look that one up. Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed like it was their voices, and I thought, well, that's cool because they did Cruel Summer, which was another great season-ending song when Johnny throws his phone at the beach and they're playing that really slow version of Cruel Summer. I thought was another just fantastic musical moment for the show.
Yeah. They didn't just rely on some of the just grabbing the old hits, but the kind of a reworking of some of the old songs, or like the songs from the era.
Yeah, it was much more dramatic, but it's also less expensive to pay for a reversion of a song to license that than it is to get the actual original. You have to pay the recording, the people that recorded it, and there's a lot more cost that goes into the original. So it's very common that they'll do reversions of songs, have another band record it. But I love the way that they slowed it down and they made it a lot more dramatic. They put the strings in there and really built some tension. And then you see it, Allie's name pops up on his phone that she sent him her friend request. I'm like, oh my God, that's another like that 5 seconds. If Kreese would have just waited, he would have been pardoned. That same kind of moment. And I just love that.
Exactly.
People cannot rest for 2 seconds. I'm telling you.
Nope. I can't either. It's like, it's over. And I'm like, I want more.
Exactly. And that's the greatest stuff when they can leave you going, okay. So it's like, what was the album I was trying to think of? Long Live Rock and Roll by Rainbow. So, the album's really powerful. It's got, The Shed, it's got Gates of Babylon, it's got Long Live Rock and Roll, Kill the King. And then the last song on the album is Rainbow Eyes, which is this really slow, dramatic song. And I'm thinking that ending of that song it makes me feel like, okay, I've heard the album. It doesn't end on a powerful note that makes me want to go back and start the album over again.
Right.
And that's kind of the idea. You want to finish on a note that makes people go back and start listening to it again. And I kind of feel like every single ending that they've had at every one of these seasons makes me go, okay, I got to watch that season again. Or start it from the beginning and watch all 5 of them again. It leaves you on that's not enough. I need more.
Right. Yeah. That's a perfect way of putting it. Is it leaves you wanting more.
Exactly. Well, I didn't mention it at the beginning of the show, John, if this is the first time that you guys have seen John on the podcast, he is from the Deep Purple podcast, which comes out every Sunday night. And I struggle to not listen to it on Sunday night. I try and save it for Monday. Sometimes I get through it, but while I'm making my food for the week, a lot of times I'll put the podcast on. I will never miss an episode of your show. It's my favorite podcast to listen to. I don't listen to my own shows. I listen to you guys.
Thank you as always.
You guys are getting close to 200 episodes, is it?
Yeah, we just if I believe my counting is correct, my math is correct here, I believe we just recorded episode 190 the other day. Wow. So we already started talking about what are we going to do for the big 200.
It's a milestone episode.
So we'll see.
I'm looking forward to it. If I'm sure whatever it is, I'll enjoy it because you guys, even if the album you're reviewing, because you guys are doing not just the Deep Purple albums, but you're doing all the work from the entire extended family, which will keep you in business for a good decade to come, doing a show every week.
We'll be dead. We'll be dead before we run out of material.
And then you guys always have me on the experimental episodes like the Deep Purple Game Show and What If Trivia.
Yeah, I'd love to do another one of those again.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. But so I really enjoy the show. I'm glad that you guys do it, but I love how you dive deep into it. And of course, you guys are part of the Deep Dive Network, like my Uriah Heep, the Magician's podcast. This show is not part of the Deep Dive Network because I don't really this is probably the deepest dive into anything I've done since I started the show. Yeah. And thanks so much, John, for doing it with me. I had a great time. We really dug in. I mean, there's like a million more things we could talk about, but at some point people are going to stop listening.
Yeah, we got to self-edit here because I think we're the only ones they got to be this interested in it.
Well, I see that the sun's already gone down in your part of the country. So
yeah, you saw back here, like my window was light when we started.
yeah, the day has slowly turned to night. Well, my friend, thank you so much. We'll do another episode before too much longer. But this was a blast. I like doing something a little different.
Yeah, me too. I always have fun coming on the show. I can't wait to come on again.
Oh, you'll be back. Don't worry.
I know.
We'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.